Well, it's no longer abnormally warm in Chicago. The cold weather is here, and it dropped so quickly that I was kind of in a frenzy to get everything winterized in my garden, but I'm done now. And since I've only shown you bits and pieces of what I've been doing, I figured this will kind of be sort of a December garden tour. And if you're new here, sorry that this is the first look at my garden. I swear it normally looks a lot better than this, but I'm going to go around and show you where everything is, because unless I find something, everything is going to stay where it's at all the way through winter. Look who's here to join us. Stevie and Oreo. I have been Googling if pigeons handle cold weather, and they do, but I'm still nervous for them. How you guys doing? You want to hang out while I walk around the deck? Let's start with my center raised bed. So this is the largest of all of my raised beds. And I did pull zinnias maybe back in August or September. And then I planted some marigolds, pansies, one broccoli plant that I did not get ahead of broccoli from. What else did I put in here? Oh, some coneflower. So all of these I've just left in the bed. Some of them are annuals. I'm just waiting until spring to pull them. I'm going to see if any of the perennials come back. Now, last year, it was actually a mild enough winter that the pansies came back in spring. So I would be really excited if I don't have to plant new pansies, but we'll see what this winter brings. And then as far as the coneflower, in the past, some have come back and some haven't. So we'll just kind of wait and see. But I basically have not touched this bed. If the birds find anything in it that they can use throughout the winter, I'm going to let them. The pigeons are now walking around the deck floor. Hello, guys. So that's what's in this bed. Again, I didn't do anything to it. The drip is still in it. It's not actively running, but the drip is still laid out in it. I haven't done anything to this bed. Moving on over now, let's take a look at these two raised beds. The one on the left, the shorter one, I've had since 2019. So it started out as the color on the right, which I just got this year. So it should age and weather the same color as the one on the left. So in the raised bed here on my right, I have my sunflower stalks that I turned into a pea trellis. So these were sunflowers that grew this season. I will leave them here, and then I will use them again in the spring to grow peas. These are the peas that were growing. I got a good amount before the super cold temperatures came in and even killed the cool weather plants. So I'm gonna leave these here. Actually, maybe I will cut these down. I might cut these down and just lay them in the bed. This year I've left a lot more garden waste just in the beds to break down than I ever have before. It worked great last year, and the less stuff I have to carry downstairs, the better. So I'm just gonna cut these peas back, lay them on the ground. I also have some pansies in here that, fingers crossed, come back. And I think that's everything that I have in this raised bed. The one over here is kind of a mess, but I'm trying something out. So I just showed you how I overwinter my dahlias, and I'll post that link down below, but I can't normally leave them out here. They're only hardy, usually down to zone 8, and we are zone 6. So all of my dahlia tubers that were in grow bags or pots are in the garage, and I'll talk more about what's in my garage at the end of the video. But I did leave one in here because I figured let's try it out and see what happens. I don't have high hopes, but I do love experimenting in the garden. So basically what I did here was throw a bunch of stuff on top of this bed and hope that it keeps the dahlia warm. I know that's a very advanced gardening technique, but like I said, do I think it's gonna work? I don't know, but I can still hold out a little bit of hope, and then we'll just see what happens in the spring. Now, for the two raised beds behind me, this one right here only had gomphrena in it. A few different varieties, 4 or 5 different varieties. As I realized when I was doing the Christmas tree video, I did not harvest nearly as much as I should have, but I left this for the first time ever over winter. Usually I do pull it at the end of the season, but I'm not planting anything in here until the gomphrena next year. And I have seen a bunch of finches, I think they're finches, maybe they're sparrows, eating off of these plants. So again, I'm trying to leave more in my garden and worry about cleanup in the spring if there's nothing that I have to store somewhere else or something that I have to pull, for example, to make room for my bulbs. So this is just full of gomphrena. It does make a mess all over the deck, so I do have to pretty regularly sweep as the petals fall off. I also have a shop vac that I used to get in the crevices, so it is messy. Next year, I would probably leave less plants and like cut them here so it doesn't create such a mess, but I really do love this. And it's nice. I mean, it's not like it's pretty, but I do like seeing something out here instead of just empty raised beds. Now this bed here is what I'm trying to make my natives bed. Now I do have some natives in other places, but I've kind of put only natives in this bed. What I have in here right now: milkweed, I have rudbeckia, I have prairie onion, and I have some echinacea. Now, I'm quickly realizing that the rudbeckia is taking over, so I think next spring I'm going to dig it up, plant each of them in their own pot. I have 2 of them in here, and then kind of see how the other plants grow. But I am looking forward to see if I can make this a bed where I don't have to plant anything. It just comes back every year. I think that would be really nice. And of course, having more natives in my garden, I am trying to incorporate them where I can. Do have trouble with them sometimes surviving the winters in containers, but we'll see. Rudbeckia usually is pretty tough and survives. We'll see about the milkweed, prairie onion. It's the first winter for them. Like I said before, the echinacea, I've had some come back, some not, so we'll kind of see. And I will sometimes, if things come back, I will plant them in other raised beds. Like I said, I'm moving the rudbeckia next spring. I pulled some echinacea from the center bed last spring and planted it in this bed. So 1 or 2 of these has survived one winter, but again, last winter was pretty mild. So we'll see what this one brings. Before I head over to those 3 grow bags and the final raised bed I have out here, this is my herb garden setup. So it is empty now. I brought in the terracotta pots because they would break in the winter. Again, my irrigation is just laying out. I did open all of the tubes to let them drain. They don't have to be blown out because the tube is so small, but if you twist them, they are twisted all the way to the right, they're open. If you twist all the way to the left, they're closed. So I'm leaving all these open just to drip any excess water out. I have left my drip out now for however many winters we've been here, and it's been fine. So should you do it? I don't know, but I am doing it because it's worked for me so far. I also do leave out these stands because I don't want to clutter up inside too much, so I try to keep as much stuff outside as I can. And so far, they've done well for the last few winters, and I also don't mind if things get worn. Like if things rust or get worn, I kind of like that look. So all of this just stays outside. I could probably get another tarp. Maybe I will do that. I think we might have an extra tarp somewhere and just toss it on top for a little bit of protection. So add it to my list. Cut down peas, tarp, the herb garden setup. So I have these 3 30-gallon grow bags that are kind of starting to get tears in them. They're 5 years old. I leave them outside over winter. At some point, I might swap them out, but until they no longer hold soil, I'm going to keep them here. What is in here are the tomato root balls, because I find that any of the larger root balls are much easier to pull in the spring. So I'm leaving those in there over winter, and then I just put a bunch of stuff on top. So put a bunch of the garden waste, again, to try to keep it up here and let it decompose into the soil. If there's anything birds or insects can use, go at it. I don't really know if they will use anything here or not, but at least it's out here. And I do usually get a pretty good breakdown of my garden waste by the time spring comes around. Now behind me, I do also have garden waste on top, but there's nothing in this bed. Like nothing is planted. I pulled all of the annuals. I'm trying to think what I had in here. I know I had China asters. I think I had some zinnias, some status as well. So I did go ahead and pull all of those, and now I'm just letting the garden waste break down on it. But yeah, nothing is currently planted in this raised bed. Now let me just take you around and show you some of the miscellaneous items in pots. This was a lemon balm that overtook my strawberries. I'm leaving it here because I did not purposely plant the lemon balm. I'm going to see what happens over winter, so that is staying right in place. Over here, I kind of forgot that I planted a hollyhock with the sunflower that was in here. You can see all the leaves drooping from the cold weather. So I'm going to see if that survives. I just planted it this past spring. Again, do I have high hopes? I don't know. But at least it is tucked between these 2 raised beds, the wall, and then this is an empty pot that I shoved up against it for some extra insulation. The flower cart is empty. Well, empty of plants, except for a few pieces of debris I left behind. But this is where I store stuff. There's not actually a ton that I've left out here right now, but these are all my plant lifts, watering cans, some flower boxes. Again, just leaving them out here so they don't clutter up the winter, because it is like 5 months before I plant things again outside. I have my broom, and then this corner, the only pots that have plants in them are the 2 raspberry bushes. They still have leaves because, like I said, the temperature dropped really quickly, so the leaves didn't have time to fall. They just froze onto the plant. But those are now tucked in between empty pots, grow bags filled with soil, pots filled with soil, again, just shoving everything up against them in the corner to give them a little bit of insulation. These I have overwintered this way 3 years at least. 3 winters they have survived, so I have high hopes for them. And I don't cover them or anything. I just leave this corner as it is. Oh, and also I have my stacked cages with the pots on top so I don't poke myself in the eye. But that's how I've overwintered everything on my deck. I did move in like my irrigation timer, anything that kind of connects to it. It's just the irrigation tubing that I've left out. But that's my front deck. And we're going to see, because again, this is the most I've ever just left outside. We're going to see in the spring if I mind the extra cleanup. But for me, it does just feel a lot easier, especially for the larger plants. And in the spring, I am very excited to get outside and do some garden work. So this is the front deck. Let's go ahead and head to the back deck. We are out on the back deck now. I would say this one probably looks a little bit less pretty just because there are much fewer plants, although I do have some evergreens back here. So fingers crossed they survive the winter. There's also something exciting here too, but let me go ahead and, well, I guess we'll just start over here. I have my bucket planter, which is on wheels. Again, not storing this inside, just leaving it out here for the winter. And then I have another raised bed. So this raised bed is from Cedar Planters. They sent me the bed, but then I got the cover, and then there are little feet on the bottom of the legs just to protect the deck a little bit more. I might plant this up in a few days. We'll see. I feel like if I have a raised bed out here, I can't just leave it empty all winter. So you might see that in a few videos from now. But what I want to do, and I'm excited to do, is I have all of my planters are cedar. I have 4 different brands. So far, from my experience, there are things I like and dislike about all of them. And I mean, they're all cedar raised beds, so how different can they really be? But I want to do like a full review of all of them and see like, here's the benefits I found, here's the drawbacks. But really, because one doesn't stand out completely, I'd probably just go for whatever suits your space, the sizing that you need, how you prefer that it looks, because they all look just slightly different, and then probably priced the most often. I think they're all, for similar sizes, pretty evenly priced, but I like to get my raised beds in the winter. I got these behind me last winter, 2 winters ago, and put them out because 1, availability is great, and 2, usually they are running sales. So I like to get the structure of my deck in place. This is not going to stay here. I'm going to move it. I will figure that out at a later point in time. With my beautiful back border here, I have my irrigation, again, still just laid out. All of the little sprinklers are open. I have my evergreens, and then this is where I planted my bulbs. So I will also link that video down below if you want to see how I did it. I've had hits and misses over the years, so I'm trying a few different things. To keep the tarps and the greenhouse cover in place, I just used either pots or grow bags. So those grow bags are empty. I just tossed all of my platforms for my plants there. I couldn't get this black-eyed Susan off the cage because it was so tangled, so she will come off in spring. Again, more pots just to keep the tarp down. The cages that I have here should probably put a top on so I don't poke myself. And then my other evergreen. And then I have some plants up here that they will not survive. This Super Tunia bubblegum, if I have a picture still, I'll post it. It lasted until Thanksgiving. And not only did it last until Thanksgiving, I pulled the whole plant in September. So I must have left some of the root behind and it came back. So that was really exciting. I'm going to see if something magical happens and comes back in the spring, but not holding my breath. I have the incorrect cover on this chair, which is why it doesn't go all the way down, but things are where they are going to go and I'm not going to change it. I have these 3 flower boxes that I got for free from somebody through Instagram. There is still soil in them. So what I tend to do with my soil, well, I'll do a few different things with the soil, but in general, what I do is in the smaller pots like this, when springtime comes, if I have any larger beds to add it to, I will do that. So I might toss it in a larger pot and then fill the small pots up with fresh soil. But then I also mix in more compost. I don't ever completely empty out the soil in any of my raised beds. Maybe I've done it a couple times in a pot, but that's so much soil on a rooftop deck. I have to carry down and put it I don't know where. So everything pretty much just stays up here and gets reused in my garden. I've been doing that again since 2020 here, and it's worked so far. And behind the furniture is my greenhouse. So inside the greenhouse, which I'm not going to open just to prevent cold air from getting in, I have some any of my zone 3 or zone 4 plants, because that's 2 zones colder than my current zone, and I am testing one zone 5 plant. I think you can see there is condensation on the greenhouse. These stay pretty humid from my experience. I think I watered either 1 time or 0 times the pots in here because you don't want your plants to dry out completely. But in this case, I don't know how often I'm going to have to water. I will still check every couple of weeks, but so far, so good. One problem I've had in the past is greenhouses flying away. So a few ways that I prevent this one from flying away is, one, I switched to a shorter greenhouse. So it's shorter than the wall, which really is probably the biggest benefit because it has protection from that whole side. And then just shoving things up against it. So I shoved my chair up against it, I shoved the couch, the table, and then I did put a few heavier pots on the bottom bars, but when it's tucked in like this, it really doesn't go anywhere. And then the final thing that I did to get some winter interest, this is one of the celosia plants that was growing in the raised bed. So I cut the branch off. This was not a plant that was growing in here this year. I stuck the branch in this pot, and then I put some solar lights. I did just put the solar lights on last night, so it's kind of cloudy today. I don't know how well these work. We'll find out tonight. But then I kind of have like a lit up tree back here. I might put some also on the evergreens, we'll see. But I do like to have at least some sort of visual interest, and that's something I want to work on over the next few seasons. Again, it is harder in a container garden because the plants are so much more vulnerable over the winter, but I do want to work on getting more interest, something to see out here in the wintertime, even if it's a branch stuck in dirt, covered in lights. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is what's in my garage. So I did carry down all of my dahlias because, again, they are not hardy. We'll see if that one in the front survives. I carried down any hydrangeas that were zone 5 or higher. I don't think any were higher than that, though. I'm testing one zone 5 in the greenhouse to see how it does. This will all vary too on how mild or freezing our winter is going to be. What else is down there? Oh, I brought my fruit trees down there. I have 2 columnar apple trees, a Chicago hardy fig, a mini peach tree. Mostly, I think they are hardy enough that they could have stayed out here, but they're still in their nursery pots because I was going to plant them. Well, I still am going to plant them on the new deck on top of the garage. So I figured I'd carry them down anyway, and since they're still in small pots, the nursery pots themselves, they are probably more susceptible to root damage from the cold, so they're going to stay in there. I'll move them up and plant them in larger pots next season. I cannot wait for that. I bought so many plants in the spring thinking that construction would be done in like June, and then I realized how construction works and it does not go that fast, but they did a fantastic job. So next year I'm going to do a lot of new planting, and I think that's everything that I have down in the garage. Our garage, again, is heated to 40 degrees. That's why I can store my dahlias in there. I have known people in this zone who put them in a garage and just throw a bunch of stuff on them, blankets, whatever it might be. So try it out, but you definitely want to protect those tender plants if you're trying to get them to come back next year. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next video. And we're probably going to be inside for most of the videos over winter.